do you decide every single facet of your child? No, they're an individual themselves. And if one day your child decides that they like the color blue, would you force them to like the color red? No, you'd just be like, okay. Either you, if you did, you're a terrible parent, or you're...
And that, you know, that happens a lot too. If you have a son that likes the color pink, there will be a lot of dads out there and a lot of moms out there that are like, whoa, 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 hold up, Johnny. Pink is a girl's color. What are you doing there, man? It's very fucking weird, man. So, like, essentially, this entire conversation has been people on the right working overtime to try to justify their ability to abuse their kids. On the one side, you have the pro-LGBT people who are like, yeah, recognizing June as Pride Month and simply stating that gay and trans people exist, that's a cool thing. Hell yeah. And on the other hand, you have right-wingers who are like, no, I want to be able to force my kid to be exactly how I want them to be. That's what the argument is. That's why they have to hide behind the dog whistle of, oh, well, they should just leave children alone. Because their actual argument is that they believe they have the right to abuse their kids to try to stop them from being gay or trans. That's what this conversation is. Yeah, so Twitter is a complete shithole now. It was on that path for a while, but it is just a complete shithole with very few redeeming qualities, which is unfortunate because I enjoy the platform quite a bit. But now the entire point of Elon's takeover is more or less in effect, in that the right wing is emboldened. They're allowed to say essentially whatever they want. And because of how blue check marks work now, some of the dumbest motherfuckers who previously you would never even have to see the opinions of, coincidentally, all these people say the same shit. It's all NPC shit. Like, they might actually just be bots as well. Who's to say, get pushed up to the top of the fucking comments of the replies, and it's just the most deranged and mentally ill shit you've ever read. And it's just not a great time. And it's a shame, because like I said, I enjoy Twitter. I think it's a fun platform, and was a fun platform for a while. Now it's just incredibly boring and predictable. And it's a shame because this is part of my job as well. And aside from my YouTube, my Twitter is actually my biggest social media. But I just don't have fun with the platform anymore because that's kind of by design. I don't know why, but Elon Musk is trying his hardest to make this website a right-wing echo chamber. And it's especially annoying because one of my favorite things to do, and if you look at my tweet history, one of the things I've done the most on Twitter is make fun of / argue with right-wingers. It's not that I want Twitter to be a fucking left-wing echo chamber, because I could already have that, and I do have that in Blue Sky. And I find it really fucking boring. I don't use Blue Sky that much, because one, it's not as populated, and two, it's a fucking echo chamber. It's not fun for me. I'm a sick freak, okay? I enjoy looking at deranged right-wingers post stupid shit and making fun of it. That's what I enjoy doing. And you can't do that on Blue Sky, because there's no fucking right-wingers on there. At least not very many of them. That's why I like Twitter a lot. That's why I didn't like Tumblr either. I tried Tumblr out. Shit's boring. And the format isn't as good, in my opinion, for the way that I like to use this website. The thing I do the most on Twitter is make fun of right-wingers, is quote tweet right-wingers and make fun of them, or reply to their posts and make fun of them, / debunk them. I think that's fun. I think it's interesting. But now, there's no fucking point, because it's a whole bunch of fucking dumbass NPCs saying the same shit over and over, getting boosted to the top of replies, and it's just not fun anymore. It's so depressing, man. And it's funny, too, because Twitter literally gave right-wingers preferential treatment before Elon took over. We found that out through the Twitter files, funnily enough. You know, a release of information specifically directed by the now owner who bought the website, Elon Musk, to try to prove the opposite, literally accidentally prove that Twitter before Elon Musk gave preferential treatment to right-wingers. They allowed a variety of right-wing and far-right accounts to stay on the platform. They didn't ban them outright, even though they were within their rights to do so because of TOS violations. They actually allowed them to stay on the platform, but only shadow banned them, so that they could still make money off of the views they brought to the fucking website. Or they were literally given special treatment like the lgbtq account did, where regular TOS violations people couldn't act upon in the moderation on Twitter. They had to go through a special upper echelon of moderation and check in with them to see if enforcing that TOS violation was a thing that was okay to do, which was literally a way to protect the lgbtq account. And that was revealed in the fucking Twitter files as well. So, like, it's just unfortunate, man. Because while Twitter is never good, and it's never been good for your mental health, and using it too much is bad for you, it was certainly more fun to use before all the bigots were in a position where they didn't have to be creative with their bigotry, right? Like, it is fun for me, because, like I said, I'm a sick fuck, to go through Twitter, to look at these degenerate right-wingers post their bullshit, and because they have to, like, tiptoe within the bounds of TOS, look at the dog whistles they use and deconstruct them. I find that to be a lot of fun. I think it's interesting. It's like a puzzle game, you know? I get to kind of figure out, oh, well, that's where this dog whistle comes from, and that's actually a reference to this thing, and I look like Charlie Day with the fucking conspiracy board behind me trying to figure out the way these delusional right-wingers think. I find that to be a lot of fun. But now the platform is even more friendly to right-wingers, where they just don't even use the dog whistles really anymore. They just say the slurs. They just say the bigoted shit. And it's so fucking boring now because it's all the same. Like, back when you had to be more creative with your bigotry to get away with it and not get hit with TOS violations, you know, you had to use your dog whistles and they weren't all the same and people weren't all saying the same thing because people would use different versions of dog whistles or they might be talking about a different topic. But now the entire platform is anti-trans, anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-trans the entire time. And it's just not fun anymore. It's just a bunch of people calling people the T-slur, which, you know, communist Twitch doesn't let me say, unfortunately. And, like, I guess using dog whistles, but what about the kids? What about the kids? Which is just rehashed bigotry and rhetoric from the gay panic way back when. And the satanic panic way back when, right? Like, it's just not fun anymore. It's so boring. Like, and the most recent Nickmercs shit is, like, the biggest shining example of this. Because if there's any group out there that is as stupid as right-wingers, it's Call of Duty fans, right? And, like, this dumb fuck Nickmercs replies to a tweet of literally right-wingers, like Patriot Front members, actual domestic terrorist groups, assaulting parents that were going to a school board meeting to try to get the school board to recognize June as Pride Month in the school. That's it. That's all that was. You know, the thing that the literal White House does, the thing the federal government does. They were like, oh, well, the school board, it would be cool if we had June be Pride Month because people, you know, exist and some of them happen to be gay or trans, and that's cool. Nobody gives a shit. Wow. And somehow this stupid fuck Nickmercs is like, well, they should be leaving the kids alone. And it's like, motherfucker, they're not doing anything. It's a school board meeting of parents that are protesting the school board because they want the school board to recognize June as Pride Month. That's it. Like, they're not transing your kids. They're not turning your kids gay. That's all that it is. And then every single fucking reply. There's a whole bunch of people, like, out there, like esports commentators in the space. I don't know a lot of their names because I don't follow the shit. But people who have been in the Call of Duty scene, in the esports commentary side, or the actual players that compete, coming out and being like, yo, that's actually cringe, Nickmercs, because, you know, gay people exist. They always had. And recognizing that and kids knowing that doesn't really hurt them. Nobody gives a shit. And every single reply is blue check marks boosted to the top of the fucking reply chain, being like, yeah, well, they should stay away from the kids. All gay people are PDF files, and they're all doing child grooming. And it's like, this is not we're not having a conversation right now. You're literally schizo posting on the timeline. You're inventing things to get mad at because you're being propagandized to be mad at them. It's like keys being dangled in front of your face. Look at the shiny object. Look at this shiny object. Now you got to vote for Republicans so that we can cut the wealthy's taxes. And you don't have to take my fucking word for it, because Donald Trump will tell you himself, the fucking front runner, the literal face, the figurehead, the politician who is the Republican Party, will tell you that himself. He said, it's amazing how strongly people feel about that. I talk about cutting taxes, people go like that. Not a lot of big response. I talk about transgender and everybody goes crazy. 5 years ago, you didn't know what the hell transgender was. He's literally telling you to your face that you are a spineless rube. You are being taken advantage of. They are literally telling you that they are using bigotry to distract you and get you excited to vote for Republicans so that those Republicans give the wealthy more money. And brother, I gotta tell you, Nickmercs might be making a lot of money, but whatever fans of his out there, probably not. What tax bracket are you in? You making 25K a year, 45K a year, 75K a year? A lot of these tax breaks that are being given are for people making 250K or more a year, or even more than that, 500K a year. You know, because motherfuckers don't understand how a progressive tax system works. Raising the taxes on people making $250K a year doesn't mean that every single dollar below $250,000 gets taxed at that rate. It's every dollar after $250,000. So if you're getting taxed 10% for every dollar you make after 250K, the 250,000 in first dollar is taxed at that 10%. Every dollar before that is taxed at the rate within that bracket. But stupid motherfuckers out there is like, oh my god, he's gonna cut my taxes because I make 45K a year driving for Lyft, Uber, and streaming on Twitch. And you know, I want my taxes cut making 45K a year, which is around or in the poverty line. Like, motherfucker, you're getting played. He's literally telling you that you're getting played. But you stupid motherfuckers can't figure it out. And like I say, this is Twitter. It's a right-wing echo chamber. The majority of Americans are not feeling this way. A big reason why we're seeing a lot of electoral failures from the right, a big reason why the red wave, the red tsunami turned into a red piss puddle back during the midterms is partially because the current Republican Party is trying to look at internet engagement, Twitter, you know, Facebook, and they're modeling their politics after that. But that gives you a very small portion of your voter base, or potential voter base when it comes to independence. Turns out, a lot of independent voters are turned off with the constant anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, the constant anti-trans rhetoric, the constant anti-black and brown rhetoric with anti-CRT bullshit. They don't like it very much, so they end up voting against you. And this is more of that. And also, a lot of these replies could very well be bots. There's no way to fucking know, because they all say the same shit. It's always the same. Well, they should leave the kids alone. Well, they're telling little boys that it's okay to chop their penises off. Like, this is not being said. You don't understand how any of this shit works, but you're mad about it because you're being propagandized to give the wealthy more money. That's literally all that it is. Now, of course, there's a lot of people that are like literally out there actually that hate queer people, that don't think they should exist. A lot of them seem to also be Trump supporters and DeSantis supporters. But, you know, it's like, come on, man. It's like, you have to be smarter than this, but clearly they're not. Because this has been the Republican Party project for fucking decades now, across multiple different presidential administrations. So it's like, we're living in a world where facts don't matter, reality doesn't matter, truth doesn't matter, because whatever they want to believe, they'll believe. And they'll use whatever fucking insane justifications to do so. Very obviously, that's kind of the entire point of Donald Trump as a presidential figure, with his fake news bullshit and his alternative facts bullshit. So it's like, what do you do at that point? Like, I can't argue with these people. I can't debate these people, because they don't believe in any of the shit they're talking about. They're just using it as a means to get power. They've either been duped into thinking that Republicans getting power will help them when it likely won't unless you literally own capital and you're in like 250, 500K plus tax brackets. Otherwise, you're not getting helped by these motherfuckers. You're actually going to get hurt. If you look at the history of this country, people do worse under Republican leadership, economically speaking, but they don't give a shit about that because facts don't matter. You know, they have a reality they want to believe in and they substitute it for the one that we actually believe in. And, like, there really isn't a whole lot you could do about it, especially not on Twitter. So now the most you can do is be, like, edgy, irreverent, and ironic. And that's, like, fun for a while. And I enjoy the accounts that do it. I don't do it as much because I'm not as much of a poster. I've been posting a lot less on Twitter recently because I find it to be a lot more boring because of all this shit I've been talking about. But, like, that's all you really have. And otherwise, like, you gotta rely on the fucking octogenarians in the Democratic Party to get their shit together and actually try to win for once when they don't give a fuck about winning. So it's like, goddamn, man. Obviously, like, I'm one of the biggest proponents of doing more than simply voting and electoralism being, like, the bare minimum civic engagement, and you should absolutely be doing more if you can. But, like, goddamn. We need some kind of a way to shake sense into people. And it doesn't seem like it's going to happen through the ballot box. It seems like we need to be more, like, connected at an interpersonal and community building level, but that's really hard to do in America because unions have been decimated, though luckily they're on a bit of a come up. Local organizing is not as easy because the infrastructure in this country is literally designed to alienate you as much as possible. Everybody needs to have a car, which also makes it harder to organize. We don't have third places anymore. There aren't places you could just go and hang out really without having to spend money. There's so much shit, like, lined up against people organizing in their communities and like trying to do this on the ground shit in a very cohesive and militant way, that it's just not as easy. Like you look at France, their public transit system, their walkability is a lot better than ours, especially in Paris. Paris used to be a fucking car-infested shithole, but they've actually been pretty rapidly turning it more and more into a walkable and bikeable place where like you can still drive. It's just going to be a lot easier for a lot of people to walk or bike. So like, it's just, it's annoying. And being on websites like Twitter is like not helping because you're not doing anything on Twitter. The big problem with Twitter is that there are politicians that use this website, and being able to tell those people to their face that they're fucking idiots is really cool, and they might actually see it, and that's funny. But like, by and large, if the pitiful performance the Republican Party had in the midterms, focusing heavily on culture war, like heavily online bullshit, how much that backfired on them. Like, clearly Twitter is not real life. So like, I don't know, man. This shit sucks. Because like I say, I enjoyed the platform. It's a shame. This was a good clip from SVB, who's apparently an Overwatch content creator. This was really good.
Even if you were like, I want to protect my child so deeply, and I only want them to believe Reaganomics, right? I only want them to believe in trickle-down economics. Well, at some point in the big world, someone's going to be like, have you heard of socialism? And they're going to learn about what socialism is. And especially in the age of the internet, when Google is at hand, at some point they're going to walk outside and one of the other kids is going to be like, do you know about gay people? And I'd rather an informed person who, with a specific curriculum, someone qualified to teach the issue,
in a sterilized setting of a fucking classroom, by the way. Like, I don't know what these motherfuckers think this education would look like. Because, like, for what? That's not even sex ed. Being like, yo, some people have 2 moms, some people have 2 dads, some people have 1 mom and 1 dad. Some people just have 1 mom. Some people just have 1 dad. That shit is not sexual education. That's just telling kids reality. That's not sex education. Like, if you think of that conversation and you're immediately thinking of sex, you are sexualizing kids, my guy. That's what you're doing. If you think of, oh, well, how am I going to tell my child that gay people exist, right? The way I say it, very simple. Some people have 2 moms. Some people have 2 dads. Some people have a mom and a dad. It is what it is. People are chilling. Whatever. And the right-wing response, apparently, is like, oh, well, how am I going to tell my kids that gay people exist? Immediately, what runs through their mind is, like, gay people having sex. Like, you don't need to tell kids that, man. You don't need to do that. That's not sex education. We're just telling people reality. But for some reason, right-wingers, when they think of gay people, they immediately imagine them having sex. I don't know why. It's very weird. I don't do this. If I see 2 men holding hands walking down the street and I see them, like, kiss each other on the cheek, I don't immediately think of them butt fucking. That's not a thing I'm doing, because I'm normal. I look at that and I'm like, wow, that's 2 men holding hands and they just kissed. Wow, that's crazy. Who gives a shit? I don't give a fuck. I don't know these people. It's nice that people could do that, I guess, because in the past they weren't allowed to. Chilling. Or I might not even, like, pay attention to it, right? Like, I might see that and, like, just continue on with my day. But for some reason, motherfuckers like Nickmercs see 2 men holding hands and they're like me, like, oh my god, holy shit. Do you think one of them sucks the other one's dick? Do you think they cup the balls when they... Do you think when they have sex, they put the penis in the butt? Like, that's not everything to do with gay people, man. Do you know that there's a thing called romance as well? And it is not the same as sex, because if it was, those would be the same word. Right? There's a difference there for a reason. Romance is like, oh, I have a crush on somebody. I'm quite fond of this person. I would like to spend time with them. Maybe we would share a kiss. You know, I would take them on a date, give them flowers. We would see a movie. That's romance. Now, often, a lot of that in adult relationships does end up leading to sex. But not always. There are asexual people out there that still have romantic interests in people. Just not sexual ones. But, like, romance and sex are not the same. And for some reason, right-wingers inherently sexualize romance to the point where they think that simply kissing somebody is, like, tantamount to sex. Somehow. I don't know how the fuck you figure that out in your head, but for some reason, that's what they do. That's what they're talking about. And I don't understand it. I don't get it. Because it's not normal. It's irrational. So, like, I don't understand it. But, like, if you are going to sexualize romance in that way, well, then what does that mean about the motherfuckers out there who put, like, baby onesies on their son that say lady killer? Are they then sexualizing that child? Because I think they are, actually. It's really fucking weird. And it seems to be that that's just a normal thing in society. I don't know why. I think it's fucking weird. But it seems to be the case. What if you have your son out there and you see them at school? Your son is hanging out with a girl, in his class. He's like in fucking elementary school or whatever. And you're like, oh my God, is that your girlfriend? Is that your girlfriend? If you immediately conflate romance with sex and you're asking your elementary school child if they have a crush on another person in their class, under your system, are you not sexualizing that child? Because I think you are. I think logically speaking, that would follow from your point of view. I think it's weird. I don't think this way. But if that's your point of view, if you think that romance and sex are inextricably linked to the point that they might as well be synonymous, then you're kind of sexualizing kids. It's very weird. And obviously here I'm talking about like very simple stuff, right? Like how letting kids know that gay people exist, that's not sex ed. That's just telling them realities. If you think of that and you think that's sexual, that's a you problem. You got to figure that out. However, there will come a time where sexual education will become part of the curriculum for a kid. And that seems to happen around 5th grade, right? When people get into middle school. The reason for this is because this is usually around when kids are starting to go through puberty. And there will be these things that happen because of their hormones and whatnot. Well, they'll start to have crushes on other people in their grade. If you've been a kid at any point in time in your life, you've probably experienced this when you were in elementary school, when you were in middle school, whatever. And like, obviously, it's very innocent. You're like, oh my God, there's a person in my class that's my age, and I think they're cool. And I would like to get to know them better or whatever, right? Like, I fancy this person. That will happen. Like, if you've ever been a kid, and I was at one point, like, that's a thing you experience. People, like, kids in class have crushes on other people in their class. It happens. And ideally, the parents are also going to tell the kids about the birds and the bees and all this kind of shit, right? But a lot of the times, what the parents are teaching is inadequate and doesn't really help the kids in the fullest extent. If you look at studies on comprehensive sex education, you find out that reported child sexual abuse goes up with comprehensive sexual ed, meaning that kids, when they learn about a variety of things like what's not okay for somebody to do to them, etc., they understand that they might be being abused in the home, by their parents, by their family members, by other adults they trust, and then they go and report that. They tell their parents about it, they tell their teachers about it, they tell whatever authority figure out there about it, and then that helps in bringing those child abusers to justice. Rates of child abuse go down when comprehensive sex education is in place. But for some reason, right-wingers don't like it when sex ed happens in school. I don't know why that is. It's very odd. So teaching kids what is okay, what's not, teaching kids about consent, teaching kids how to be safe, is going to reduce the likelihood of negative outcomes for those kids when they're like having crushes on other people in their class or whatever. So rates of STIs go down, teen pregnancies go down, rates of abuse go down. Like, there are so many benefits to teaching the youth how to be safe and how to avoid being abused or how to not abuse others, how to be safe, how to know when, they might be being abused by adults, all this kind of shit, that are rendered by sex ed being in school at that time. But for some reason, right-wingers are opposed to this. But they'll simultaneously be like, oh, well, we want to protect the kids. They should leave little children alone. That's the real issue. It's almost like you've joined the war on child abuse on the side of the child abusers, my friend. And you might want to look into that if that's not your intention. Because I like to hope that that's not your intention. I would like to think that a lot of that is just ignorance. But if it's not, it's kind of fucked up, man. Because, like, the idea is, like, oh, well, we can't let kids know that gay people exist, and some people have 2 moms, and some people have 2 dads, and that's okay, because that might make them gay? I don't know how that works. But, like, why is it that you want to restrict that information from your kid? Is it because you want to control them, and you want to make your kid be exactly the way you want them to be? Because I got a word for that. Doing all this kind of abusive stuff to your kid, like withholding information about reality so that they are explicitly what you want them to be, that is abusive, my friend. You are controlling that kid to such an extent, and for what purpose? Is it really such a bad thing that kids know, like, some people have 2 dads? Some people have 2 moms? No. We've got no studies to suggest this. So what's the problem? It's almost like these people just don't want their kids to be gay. And they think that if their kids understand that gay people exist, then suddenly their kid will become gay. It's very weird. But, like, we can get to this argument as well, and I think SVB puts it pretty well.
Maybe the parent doesn't want their kids to learn about socialism. So here's the argument. I follow through that argument. What you're saying is that just understanding what socialism is would be so powerful that your child would be compelled to do it. What you're really telling me is that you don't really have a lot of conviction in your own beliefs. You think that your like hyper-capitalistic ideology is so fragile that should someone even encounter what socialism is, they will crumble and change their ideology to match socialism.
And you can replace socialism with being gay, right? Because that's the analogy that SVV was making in the beginning. But that's like the idea is like, oh, well, if the mere understanding that your kid would have that gay people exist is enough to make them gay, which is a thing that people seem to believe on the right, well, then I got news for you, man. I don't think they were ever that straight. Like, if simply having the knowledge is enough, then there's a little bit more going on there than simply learning that information. Because we have historical precedent for people that knew they were whatever kind of queer very early on when they were like single digits even. This is just a thing that happens, right? Like, especially when it comes to like being trans. Because that's just a gender identity. That's just an expression thing. They're like, there will be people who are like 4, 5, 6 years old have said that they remember being more interested in being perceived as a girl even though they were born a boy or vice versa. Right? But even then, when kids are going to school, there will be gay people out there that'll be like, oh yeah, I remember having crushes on other girls in school and I'm a girl when I was in my classes. Like, we have historical precedent. We understand that this is a thing that happens. So like, if the mere knowledge that gay people exist is enough to turn your kid gay, I don't think you comprehend exactly what that means about your ideology, about your way of thinking. But, you know, SVB says it better than I probably could.
If that's the case, you've already lost. If your child learns about socialism and becomes a socialist, they probably wanted to be a socialist all along. Someone believing a certain thing only because of the absence of knowledge of something else is not belief. That's ignorance. Someone believing that they're straight only because they don't know that there's a possibility to be queer is not them actually being straight. They were never that straight to begin with. If the slightest indicator that they could be something else gets them to change their mind. What you're saying is that you don't want your child to be gay, which is just homophobic, right? It's like you're just saying that, like, of all the things my child could be, I don't want them to be gay.
Yep.
So you're not that tolerant.
It's like when the Club Q shooter, who pretended to be non-binary to avoid hate crime charges and then stopped pretending after they got hate crime charges anyway, there was an interview with his dad. And when the dad literally said when he first found out that his son shot up a queer bar or was involved in a shooting at a queer bar, his first thought was, oh my God, my son was at a queer bar, is he gay? He literally said this. He was more offended at the idea of his son being gay than his son being a fucking mass shooter. And obviously, this is not the case, I would imagine, for the majority of people out there. But there are going to be homophobes out there that would rather their kid be dead than be gay. There are even parents that go so far as to eject them from their homes and force them into homelessness, or physically and emotionally abuse them, or send them into conversion therapy, which is literally just torture. So clearly, these people are so scared of their children being gay, being trans, whatever, either at that point in time or understanding themselves to be that in the future, that they're willing to justify all manner of child abuse, like physically and emotionally abusing their kid. Like sending them to conversion therapy, which, like I say, every major medical institution out there has said is literally just torture, doesn't work. Making them homeless, kicking them out of the home, and subjecting them to life on the streets. They are so scared of their kid potentially being gay or trans, they're willing to justify all manner of child abuse to try to stop it from happening. Even though there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. Because I got news for you. Gay people are still a minority. Trans people are still a minority. Now, of course, a lot of this is probably undercounted, but that is the reality. Once the plateau ends up leveling out, it's probably still going to be a minority of people who are gay or trans. I don't know. It's very odd. It's a very odd fear to have, and it makes you wonder where it stems from. Because it's likely that it's something that they picked up on from their upbringing, right? When they were kids, and the way that their parents taught them, the bigotry that their parents subjected them to, the abuse that their parents subjected them to. But you got to break the cycle at some point. They think being queer is some kind of ideology for some reason. Yeah, well, it's because it's easier to fight against an ideology and say that an ideology like transgenderism should be eradicated from public life than to say trans people should be you know what I mean? It allows them to justify all manner of abuse.
Because, like, do you decide every single facet of your child? No, they're an individual themselves. And if one day your child decides that they like the color blue, would you force them to like the color red? No, you'd just be like, okay. Either if you did, you're a terrible parent, or you're.
And that, that happens a lot too. If you have a son that likes the color pink, there will be a lot of dads out there and a lot of moms out there that are like, whoa, 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 hold up, Johnny. Pink is a girl's color. What are you doing there, man? Are you one of them queers? It's very fucking weird, man. So, like, essentially, this entire conversation has been people on the right working overtime to try to justify their ability to abuse their kids. And their opposition is people simply saying that we should acknowledge that gay and trans people exist and that that's okay. That's it. On the one side, you have the pro-LGBT people who are like, yeah, recognizing June as Pride Month and simply stating that gay and trans people exist, that's a cool thing. Because there are gay and trans people out there, and understanding that helps them feel better. Hell yeah. And on the other hand, you have right-wingers who are like, no, I really want to be able to abuse my kids. I want to be able to force my kid to be exactly how I want them to be. And it's like, man, that's not really a convincing argument. But that's what the argument is. That's why they have to hide behind the dog whistle of, oh, well, they should just leave children alone. We care about the kids. What about the kids? That's why they have to hide behind the dog whistles, because their actual argument is that they believe they have the right to abuse their kids to try to stop them from being gay or trans. That's what this conversation is. And of course, a lot of this conversation, like I say, is around Twitter, and right now it's a fucking echo chamber. It's a bubble. It is not representative of the average American. The average American is pretty overwhelmingly in favor of same-sex marriage being the law of the land and remaining the law of the land. I think I saw a recent study where about 70% of Americans are in favor of same-sex marriage. So it's like, obviously this is a very online conversation, but the problem is that the Republican Party of the modern day is literally basing their policy platform on heavily online shit. Because they think clicks and engagement translate into real life. And of course, to an extent, there is some overlap, but it's not one-to-one, because not everybody is as heavily online as the right-wing blue-check dipshits in the comments of these being like, oh, well, they're grooming kids, blah, blah, blah. It's a problem. Anyway, this is a good clip, so we'll continue it.
Either if you did, you're a terrible parent, or your child is going to like blue and they're going to continue liking blue. What if they taught racism and Nazi values in school? My guy, they're not teaching you to be gay. They're just teaching you what being gay is. They do teach you what Nazi values were, you fucking moron.
What?
They actually teach you what Nazi values are. And
no way. Now, some would say that they don't teach people enough how bad the Nazis were and the extent to how bad they were historically. Much the same way that they don't teach the Nazis of the United States of America, the Confederacy, the traitorous fucking bastards that spilled the blood of their own countrymen in order to secede from the Union because they wanted to keep their fucking slaves. We don't teach kids how bad those motherfuckers were either. We don't. And we should teach them more. We should teach them better. And you know what that's called? It's a spooky word. It's gonna scare you if you've got 2 brain cells, and that's it. CRT, right? And things related to that. So it's not literally CRT, because that's a collegiate theory that's taught in colleges. But the idea is you can get really dumbed down versions of it simply by teaching history to kids. That's it. Like, you don't have to teach an ideology. You could just teach the history, and most normal people will be like, oh, slavery was bad. Because if you learn about what happened during slavery, any normal person should be like, oh, owning another person against their will is not a good thing, right? Or if you talk about the Holocaust and the Nazis in Nazi Germany, if you teach people about that history, most normal, rational people will come out of that being like, whoa, that shit was really fucking bad. Literally just by teaching the history in the most sanitized and objective way possible, the normal person will be like, Nazis were bad. Because it's obvious. Singling out specific demographic groups and systematically slaughtering and oppressing them, that's not a good thing. Turns out most normal people agree. And that's unfortunate for the modern right-wing movement because they don't want that taught to kids. They don't want people to acknowledge that, and it makes you wonder why. It's almost like if you learn about things that have happened in history and how bad they were, and then you're able to analogize those things to things happening in the modern day, you might be having more of an impetus to fight against the things happening in the modern day that are similar to what was happening in the past. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. History doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Apparently, that's a problem for the modern Republican Party, for modern conservatism. And it makes you wonder, well, maybe they don't want people fighting against the things that are similar that are happening in the modern day. And then you gotta figure out why that is.
And if you were persuaded by the Nazi values, that would make you a racist.
True.
My guy, they literally do tell you what Nazis thought and did. And they tell you what racists thought and did. It's called a slave fucking trade. And you still, if you come out being like, I think that's great ideology, you're a fucking racist.
True! Anyway, it's a really good clip. Here's the link. This is also a really good tweet. So if you've seen the Lee Atwater tweet, which I've talked about on stream before, where he literally gives the game away of using dog whistles and the Southern strategy. He was a political consultant and strategist for the Republican Party. There's a famous quote, and this person, who is probably not the first person to do it, has decided to change some words around, and it seems to be the same. You start out in 2002 by saying F slur, F slur, F slur. By 2023, you can't say F slur. That hurts you, backfires. Because it does currently. Elon Musk is trying his best, working overtime to make it so that you can essentially say the word without any problem on Twitter, but in general, in the real world, not good. People don't like it when you do that. So you say stuff like wokeness, grooming, and all that stuff, and you're getting so abstract, now you're talking about parental rights. And all these things you're talking about are totally normal things, and a byproduct of them is gays get hurt worse than straights. Quote, we want to ban this is much more abstract than even the grooming, and a hell of a lot more abstract than F slur, F slur. This is the current moment you're living in. If you're a right-winger, if you're a conservative, if you're a Republican, they're telling you to your face that this is what is going on. Trump is literally saying that they are using bigotry to get you excited to give the wealthy more money, and you're lapping it up. Because yeah, if you get some kind of sick pleasure from gay people getting hurt, or black and brown people getting hurt, or women getting hurt, or trans people getting hurt, then, you know, that's gonna be a thing that you're interested in. I choose to believe that the average person is not as fucking demented as that. But, you know, if that's a good thing for you, then whatever. But that's only a byproduct. That's collateral damage. Because the entire point is that they're giving the wealthy more money. They're cutting taxes on the wealthy on tax brackets that you will never reach. They're cutting taxes on the wealthy and deregulating multinational corporations to force you and your parents and your loved ones and your children to work longer hours for less wages in worse conditions, and you're voting for it. And you're voting it into power, and you're happily doing it. You're clapping along like seals about it. And this is the current thing they're using to get you to do that. And I don't know, like, you're not going to learn that from me. You've probably watched like the first 2 seconds of this video if you don't agree with me, and you're already like, oh, this F slur, T slur, socialist, communist doesn't know what he, she, it, we is talking about. But like, if you are still here, I don't think you're going to learn that from me. It's going to take like real world hurt that you can actually recognize to figure that shit out. And if you're a right winger in majority red states and you're not owning capital, if you're poor, then you are being hurt. And if you can't understand that, I'm trying to help you. I don't know how else we could do this other than like profound political power, which the Democrats don't want to use. Here's hoping that the indictments and potential criminal charges that Donald Trump gets kind of shakes people's convictions a little bit in the right wing. They might just jump ship to Ron DeSantis, who is as bad, if not worse, than Donald Trump. But luckily, Ron DeSantis is rizless. He is dog shit when it comes to charisma. He doesn't have it like Donald Trump is. Like, Ron DeSantis is not funny. Ron DePantpiss, not funny. I could watch Donald Trump clips and laugh. You know, I make light of a variety of things Donald Trump says, even though I think they're terrible. I'll make jokes that are similar because I think it's funny. But I don't actually believe those things, so it's a bit more permissible, right? Like, I might be making homophobic and transphobic jokes out there, but that's just because I am a homosexual, transsexual, transgender. So it's kind of a little bit more permissible. But like, Ron DeSantis is not as funny. He doesn't have the charisma. And frankly, I think the average person in America that doesn't live in Florida kind of sees Florida as a shithole anyway. And the idea of making America Florida, I don't think is going to be appealing to a lot of people. Especially not when his like biggest political move has been fighting with Disney, which is like the pinnacle of Americana, right? Like, people like Disney. Except for the deranged lunatics that think that simply having a gay or trans character in a show is somehow sexual, which is a really weird opinion to have. Why are you sexualizing children's media? I don't know. It's not good, and you should stop doing it. But anyway, I don't think Ron DeSantis has got what it takes. Now, of course, electoralism is not all that there is. The legislative branch and the executive branch are not the only branches in the government. And in fact, the judicial branch is very powerful. And the right-wingers understand this. It's called the Federalist Society. They've been packing courts at every level, including the Supreme Court, with conservative judges, so that even if a good law goes through codifying protections for women, for queer people, for black and brown people, they could say, no, it's actually unconstitutional and we're not going to allow that law to exist. They understand that. They want to legislate from the bench. They want to do a judicial coup in this country like has happened in Orban's Hungary, like what happened in Nazi Germany. And this is a big project that they have. That's why they invited Viktor Orban to be a speaker at their conferences, right? So this is also a big problem, and you need to be aware of it, and you need to be mobilizing to, unfortunately, get Democrats elected so that they can nominate liberal judges at the very least. I don't know, I'm ranting, I'm saying shit that I've said all the time, and you love it because you're here. And if you don't, then fuck off. I'm leaving now.